The Seahawks were hoping to open the preseason with a victory over their former coach, Pete Carroll, but that didn't quite happen. It was an exciting exhibition opener at Lumen Field. However, what went down between the Seahawks and Raiders, I'll be breaking it all down here on our weekly post-game show here on Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, 12s? This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s listening in, whether you're listening from Portland, Oregon or Portland, Maine. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. And understand it is a late night. That's what we get when we have these 7 p.m. starts for the Seahawks during the preseason Pacific time. Nonetheless, tons to break down from tonight's 23-23 tie between the Seahawks and the Raiders. Without further ado, let's get into it here. Now for your lead story on our weekly post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. As is the case with every preseason opener, the Seahawks getting their first chance to have their rookies on the field for fans to see, in this case at Lumen Field. So you can see Nicky Manwari, Grey Zabel, Elijah Arroyo, and all these exciting rookies for the Seahawks. And I don't think this is hyperbole. I don't know that the Seahawks could have seen a much better first impression and that fans couldn't have seen a better first impression from this rookie group than what we got to see tonight. And obviously it didn't end with the win. You always want to get the win even in the preseason, but you didn't lose either. 23-23, Pete Carroll still can't have a normal game in Seattle now as the head coach of the Raiders, even in an exhibition contest. The rookies, though, came out to play early for the Seahawks, particularly in the offensive side of the ball, where they drafted 9 of their 11 players. We get to see a number of those guys make impact plays in the first 2 drives. And in particular, Tory Horton continuing to build off what we have seen from him on the practice field for the last several weeks, climbing his way rapidly up the depth chart to where he is now taking first-team reps for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, one of the free agents they signed this offseason. He goes out, has 3 receptions, 31 yards, catches a 10-yard touchdown from Drew Lock midway through the second quarter, spun his way out of a tackle near the goal line to get the score, so you can see the after-the-catch ability. He had one of the greatest 5-yard punt returns that you're ever going to see as well, showcasing that special teams ability that made him such a dynamic threat, both on offense and as a return man at Colorado State. Made a couple guys miss, nearly got out of another tackle. That's how exciting this guy is every time that he touches the ball. So Tory Horton continues to be a major factor. And in the first couple drives of the game, it's worth noting the Raiders did indeed play a ton of their starters. Max Crosby played a series in this game for the Raiders. They started Geno Smith, the former quarterback for the Seahawks. He got 1 series, went 1 for 3. So they did play their starters. But Seattle's backups on offense weren't fazed at all by going against the starters for the Raiders. In fact, really impressive opening drive that unfortunately ended with a Drew Lock interception, trying to get the ball to Horton, who was open. The ball was just underthrown and picked off. But those rookies all played a big part of that opening drive. Grey Zabel with some really impressive pass protection reps, got defenders to the ground a couple of times. This dude was cooking up pancakes to the point where one of the Raiders defenders had 2 defensive holding calls because he was wrapping his hands around the outside of the blocker, just trying to make it that Zabel couldn't control him the way he had earlier, and he was getting penalized for it. It was a ugly game early for Oakland's, or Las Vegas, still going to call them Oakland, for the Raiders interior defensive line, dealing with Grey Zabel and what he was doing. And then Robbie Oots, what a debut for him. 17-yard catch and run, showing he's more than just a blocker. Stonewalled an edge defender to allow George Hani to spring for a 24-yard touchdown out wide to the left. That play was made by that block by Robbie Oots. He picked up Max Crosby on a play where a safety had dropped down in the box. It was a different look than they've seen, and he still picked it up. So you get to see him play really well in this football game. And Elijah Arroyo, not a fancy stat line by any means, 2 catches, 14 yards, but he caught both the targets thrown his direction, and he blocked pretty well early in this game. So the Seahawks got really good contributions from all of their rookies that came in. Jalen Milroe, I thought, looked really good in the second half, and he unfortunately had to deal with a bunch of penalties that hindered the team's ability to move the football, but he did lead a touchdown drive that Jakardia Wright finished off with a 1-yard touchdown. I thought his mechanics, his lower body throwing the football looked pretty darn good in first game action, so it carried over from the practice field. Got to see a couple nice throws on the run as well. Wasn't able to muster that game-winning drive with a 4th down conversion that unfortunately did not happen. But I thought overall Jalen Milroe played pretty well. And even Mason Richmond, Bryce Cabeldue, when they got in the game, there was some traction with their run game in the second half. So I thought Seattle's entire rookie class, offense-wise, Ricky White had a catch. It just seemed like everybody was getting involved. And that made this a very successful preseason opener, in my opinion. And I think you even look on the defensive side. Nicky Manwari only played two drives, 2 possessions. Had a couple tackles. One of them he shot in the backfield off of a blitz, and he chased down Ashton Genty, the 6th overall pick from Boise State, from behind, brought him down for no gain. A lot of fans noticed he was wincing after that play. From my understanding, everything was fine. He stayed in the game, but they took him out after that possession. That's about how much they wanted to play their high draft picks, was a couple possessions just to get their feet wet in this game. But overall, that was the biggest takeaway for me coming out of this game. There's a lot of other players to talk about in this preseason opener, but the rookies as a whole, this is as impressive as you could see him coming out here. Not a ton of mistakes from that incoming rookie class, and those guys were playing at a really high level, and that made it an exciting thing. Hi, John. John Boyle dropping in on our podcast today, unexpected guest. So this was a game I thought the rookies really brought it. They played at a high level early. You were able to see those guys on offense in particular really set the tone physically with their presence in the blocking game. Grey Zabel did it, a couple pancakes. He had one on Tonka Hemingway, the rookie out of South Carolina, that was extremely impressive. And that was a fun play to see live in person, him taking Hemingway down to the ground. Got to see those nice blocks from Robbie Oots. Those are the tone-setting plays the Seahawks are hoping to now have regularly that are going to allow them to play the kind of football that Mike McDonald wants to play in Seattle. So I thought that was an exciting development, getting to see Tory Horton making plays out there at the receiver position, Elijah Arroyo, even the undrafted rookies. Jakardia Wright had a 45-yard run that was wiped out. That was a brilliant run, and unfortunately a holding penalty brought it back. That didn't need to happen for that play to be sprung, but it just felt like these rookies, for the most part, really played at a high level in this game, and that's what you want to see. You want to see the execution from those incoming rookies. You want to see him come out and play at a high level in that first game, not make a ton of mistakes. Certainly some areas to clean up, but everybody's going to look at the final score like, well, they squandered a 13-point halftime lead. That was created by the rookies that are expected to make an impact right away. That's what matters to me in this game, that you did have that 16-3 lead, and then a lot of those guys weren't playing really once the second half started, and it was onto the third and fourth stringers. The players that are going to be playing for the most part on Sundays for the Seahawks, they were making the plays necessary to put together a really nice first half. So that is what matters, not the final score. And they didn't lose. So that's worth noting. Yeah, you didn't win, but they didn't lose. The rookies went out and really played at a high level, and that was exciting. When I come back, it's our first game balls of the year for an official game. We had game balls for Football Fest, but that was really just situations. This is an actual game. I'm going to dish out my game balls: offense, defense, special teams for the first time this year. That's coming up next here on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back, so fire up the chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down today on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, Rob and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years and love how smooth the draft day experience is. Our Locked On League's been running through Yahoo for a while now. Easy setup, great mobile app, and the smack talk just hits different in the message boards, especially when I'm rubbing a victory in Rob's face. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy's Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in, and thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks opening their preseason at Lumen Field. A few familiar friends in Pete Carroll and Geno Smith coming back to town. The game ends in a draw, a 23-23 tie, so no winners, no victors, no losers. Nonetheless, it was actually a pretty exciting game for a preseason contest. There was a lot of fun stuff that happened. A blocked field goal at the end preserved the win for the Seahawks. More on that here in a bit. Let's talk game balls. And on offense, I talked about Tory Horton in the game he had. Certainly, he was a candidate to get a game ball. But really, this game was all about the play of George Hani, and what a game the second year back out of Boise State had for this offense. Touched the ball 8 times, 81 total yards, scored a touchdown. Every time the ball was in his hands, he was making things happen. Even the plays that he was only getting a couple of yards, it felt like he was always making at least one guy miss, or he was breaking a tackle. And I just love the way that George Hani runs. This is the second preseason that we've seen him come out in these games and play at a high level. And it's like Mike McDonald was talking about afterwards. This is just one of those guys that doesn't get talked about enough. And now that Kenny McIntosh is done for the season, this is a great opportunity for George Hani to now be the third down back for the Seahawks, because he might be the best all-around back aside from Ken Walker. I think when Ken Walker III is healthy, at least in the passing game, catching the football, extremely dynamic. But George Hani is a much better pass protector than what he is. He's a better receiver than what Damen Martinez is. And he showed tonight, like, this guy's got some acceleration in his game as a runner. It catches you off guard. You'd think he'd be more of a between the tackle style runner. He can do that. He can run as a punishing runner, but he's got some jets. He's got a quick accelerator where he can get outside and he can make plays happen. And he did that a couple times this game. His first run went for 19 yards. He had a run later in the game behind Robbie Oots. I mentioned this earlier, where Oots just locked up the edge defender and made it really easy for George Hani to get outside. He outran a pursuing cornerback and took off for the races. Great body control to get himself inside the pylon where the football's at so that he could have a touchdown. They ruled out the one. Replay overturned that to make it 7-0 Seattle. And oh, by the way, Hani also added a 20-yard play on a screen on a 3rd and 10 in the second quarter that the Raiders had snuffed out pretty well, and he made another defender miss and then turned on the Jets, picked up 20 yards. Really refreshing to see the screen aspect of that as well. But again, 81 yards for him on 8 touches, over 10 yards per touch. An impressive first preseason game for George Hani, who to me was easily the best player on offense for the Seahawks in this game. On the defensive side of the ball, let's give some love to Nehemiah Pritchette, the second-year corner out of Auburn, who had some struggles last year when he was thrust into action early in his rookie year. And that was part of what led to Josh Jobe eventually getting the third cornerback spot and not letting go of it. Trey Brown didn't secure that job. Josh Jobe did. Nehemiah Pritchette did not have the opportunity the rest of the year to try to get into the lineup and play on defense. But today, we get to see how far he's come instincts-wise. And Aiden O'Connell has started quite a few games in the NFL for the Raiders. He's the backup now behind Geno Smith. Aiden O'Connell was trying to squeeze the ball in to one of his young receivers on an out route, and Nehemiah Pritchette baited him. Pritchette made it kind of look like he was sitting on something else, but he was ready for that play, jumped the route, and intercepts it. He added a second pass breakup later in the game that was a really nice play going against a go route on the right side. O'Connell couldn't get it squeezed in there as he got a hand on it. I just thought Pritchette played really well and a couple nice tackles, did miss one, but I thought this was a really good stepping stone for the second-year player out of Auburn. And this is a very wide open group behind the top couple players at corner, especially without Shaquille Griffin contributing much to this point. They need to figure out who's going to be the fourth, fifth corner, if they're going to keep a special teams guy. They've got practice squad as well. Nehemiah Pritchette can still very well be that fourth corner, and he is showing progress from last season. So I'm encouraged to see what he did tonight, the way that he was playing the football. That's certainly an exciting development for the Seahawks. There's a few other players that I consider for this. When we get to the 3 up, 3 down segment, I'll talk about a couple of those guys that impressed today on the defensive side of the football. But Pritchette, undoubtedly. Josh Jobe, we could mention here, but his interception, he got beat badly on. It was a bad underthrow. Looked like he was catching a punt. He made the play, but the much more impressive interception was the one that Nehemiah Pritchette made. No question about it. As for special teams, we could mention a couple guys, but the game was decided as a draw because of the play that undrafted rookie Jaylen Gaines made. And apologies for those of you watching on YouTube that only have a picture of a helmet. We don't have any Seahawks pictures right now of Jaylen Gaines. I don't have any in my collection of pictures from practice. So we'll just go with the generic here, but we'll have some now after this game. Jaylen Gaines coming through with a crucial blocked field goal on Daniel Carlson at the end that made sure the Seahawks did not lose this game. And they have a 23-23 tie. And Gaines made a couple other nice plays on special teams. Could have mentioned George Hani for an honorable mention here. Had a really nice tackle on kick coverage. But Jaylen Gaines secured this with the play that he made on special teams at the end of the game that cemented this tie and made sure that the Seahawks did not lose this game. And Mike McDonald loves impact plays like that. Gaines is one of those undrafted rookie edges that is trying to find a way to at least be a practice squad player here that can continue to be developed. Had a really good career at the FCS level, playing for Illinois State. Kind of an undersized player, but as he showed there, he can do the things you need to do on special teams. Had a couple nice plays on defense, rushing the passer as well in this game. So let's give him the nod here. Special teams player Jaylen Gaines, really good debut for him in a Seahawks uniform. When I come back, look, we've got 3 up, 3 down. We've got a bunch more players to dive into coming out of this draw at Lumen Field on offense and defense. Who's hot, who's not coming out of that game. Going to get to that up next here on this post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks and the Raiders dueling to a tie tonight at Lumen Field in their respective preseason openers, 23-23. The Seahawks were up 16-3 at half. Raiders stormed back, tied the game, had a chance to win it at the end. Jaylen Gaines prevented that from happening with a blocked field goal. A lot of players that stood out in this exhibition opener, and there were a few guys I think that missed golden opportunities. Let's start on the stock watch with the positive side of things, with the players who are hot coming out of this game. And I'm going to start in the backfield with a player who I've actually mentioned a few times in the last week leading up to this game that I thought he might be this year's Troymaine Pope. That's always going to be the name that I refer when we're talking about a breakout undrafted running back. SaRodorick Thompson being honorable mention there, but he didn't quite have the preseason that we saw from Troymaine Pope all those years ago, kind of coming out of nowhere. Jakardia Wright had a really good game, averaged 4.9 yards per carry, 34 yards rushing on the day, had a 45-yard run that was wiped out, unfortunately, by a Brady Russell holding call. But even without that, he was effective. He had a 10-yard run that got into the goal line. Very next play, uses his vision to cut back in the teeth of the defense and finds his way into the end zone for his first NFL touchdown. This guy's 220 pounds. He's a battering ram, but he showed he's got a little more burst maybe than is advertised in this game, especially with that run that was called back by penalty. And I just like the way he plays the game. he's not going to be making the roster unless there's a bunch of injuries ahead of him. But I do think that Jakardia Wright has a chance to be a guy that can absolutely play in the league and should be at minimum on Seattle's practice squad as an insurance policy. So he looks every bit like a capable NFL back, at least a guy that can be a practice squatter. I like the fact that he had a lot of catches in college. We didn't get to see that aspect of his game tonight, but ran the ball really hard, showed a little more burst than you would expect based on his testing numbers. I thought it was a really good debut for Jakardia Wright going out there and getting some fans tonight. Fans got a first glimpse of this guy's punching style. And I even had a few people mention that he kind of ran like Chris Carson. I do see the similar gait, just not the same caliber athlete, but he does run a similar style and the same run gait. So I could see why some fans would be at least saying that from a physical appearance, that he looks kind of like Chris Carson. And second on my list, going to the defensive side of the football, this is a player that I almost considered giving the defensive game ball to, because Tyreek Smith didn't stuff the stat sheet necessarily, but the plays that he made were huge in this game. He had a quarterback hit on Aiden O'Connell, where he also got his hand on the football for a pass breakup. So he got a double whammy there. And then later in the half, there was a 24-yard completion that got wiped out because he drew a hold. We're finally seeing some of the pass rushing that we had not seen from Tyreek Smith in his first couple years in the league. It finally showed up some tonight, and he made a couple nice plays in the run game, and he also had the tackle on the first kickoff to open the game. So a lot to be excited about there. And with Uchenna Nwosu's status being uncertain for the start of the season, I mean, Tyreek Smith, I think, now has the inside track to that fifth spot, assuming somebody like a Jadeveon Clowney is not brought in free agency, or for those of you that really like fantasy land, a trade for Micah Parsons. This appears to be the guy that's the front runner to get that last spot at the edge position. I can't say that Connor O'Toole is quite to that point yet, but the undrafted rookie out of Utah had 3 quarterback hits and a sack tonight. So he was easily the most productive pass rusher that the Seahawks had in their preseason opener. Former receiver, really athletic player that has had some injuries at the college level since changing positions, but he is flashing. This is a guy that I think gets by a lot on his physical tools, his athleticism, and he's still trying to catch up in terms of technique in a position that he's still relatively new to. But tonight gave you a glimpse of some of the things that he can do just with that sheer athleticism. So he's another one that I'm thinking is playing his way into being in consideration as a practice squatter that they can continue to develop, maybe add a little bit more mass to his body so that he can play in the NFL and might be able to help them down the line. I don't know that he's going to be somebody that can contribute right now, but he's a player that could fit this defense with more technique refinement and a little bit more experience. I liked what I saw from him tonight. All 3 of those players did a lot of really good things. And I'll add Tyreek Young in this too, because he only had 1 catch, but it was a 31-yard reception that set up Tory Horton's touchdown. Every time he touches the ball, he's just making really fun things happen. Another player that took what he's done on the practice field and applied it to the game. So all 4 of those players, I think, did a lot to help themselves in this contest. You could throw Mike Morris in there with the tackle for loss and Ashton Genty that had a lot of really positive plays. As for the flip side, the guys that maybe didn't take advantage of the opportunities they had tonight in this game against the Raiders, on the negative side, I've got to start with Damen Martinez, the rookie running back out of Miami, formerly of Oregon State. And I'm still really excited about the future of this kid. But the reason that I've got to mention him first, he averaged 1.7 yards per carry. Well, a lot of that was not his fault. He was running behind the second and third string offensive lines in this game. But there were some openings for Jakardia Wright, and it felt like Martinez was having a hard time keeping his feet in this game. I saw him lose his footing a couple of times on offense. Didn't do anything in the passing game as well. Had a decent pass pro rep, but didn't maintain it all the way through, and the rusher was still able to get after the quarterback. So it felt like an uneven performance at best from him. You add in a muffed kickoff. The Seahawks are trying to find some special teams value with Damen Martinez. That was not something he did very much at the college level. Didn't return any kicks. They're trying him out there. That looks like that is a major work in progress. So I don't know that he hurt himself as far as making this football team. Certainly George Hani helped his odds being the number 3 back, but this was not the debut, the scintillating debut that I thought we might see from Damen Martinez. And we'll see what he looks like against the Chiefs in their second preseason game. Continuing on the downside here, On offense, Cody White, I've talked him up a lot in this training camp in terms of being a guy that has done a lot of good things on the practice field. But it's been an uneven August for him, uneven July leading into that to start camp. And he's had more drops than we're used to seeing on the practice field. He had a really good week leading up to this, had a 2-touchdown practice, for example. So it seemed like he was trending in the right direction, but both the targets he had today wasn't able to reel him in. One of them he got decked, so that one was a little more excusable, but didn't get a catch today. Had a lot of other receivers he's competing against that put together solid stat lines, at least got their hands on one or two footballs. He was not able to do that. So I'm wondering where he stands now at this point. It feels like some of these other young receivers that have come in have already passed him on the practice field and then doesn't get anything done in a preseason setting. Feels like he now is definitely on the wrong side of the bubble and is trending in the wrong direction. He's going to have to figure things out here to get back into contention for one of those roster spots or even practice squad consideration with players like Tyrone Broden very much in the mix that have a lot more youth on their side, players that have contract flexibility that Cody White does not have. Those are things that are going to weigh into these decisions, especially with him not producing the way that he has in the past. And my last player for 3 down here is actually multiple players. It's the undrafted free agent corners. There was definitely a big drop-off once the Seahawks went from having Nehemiah Pritchette, Josh Jobe, Demarion Williams out there at the quarterback spot. Once those guys had checked out and Cam Alexander, Isaac Waxter checked in, the Raiders were still playing Aiden O'Connell for most of the half, and he has started a lot of games in the league. You could tell that he was taking advantage of these young players. The rookie Miller from North Dakota State came in and threw a 41-yard touchdown. Cam Alexander, one of the undrafted corners I mentioned, gave up a 41-yard touchdown on that play. Waxter gave up several first down conversions in coverage as well. It was definitely clear there was a major drop-off from those first 3 corners that played today, and then going to the undrafted guys at the bottom of the depth chart. Those players really struggled. The Raiders were able to move the ball through the air. They got several chunk plays, and it nearly allowed them to steal this game in the second half. So there might still be undrafted potential for those guys to be practice squad players, but you can see the gap between the vets on this roster and those couple of undrafted players. Very hard to see any of them making the roster. Practice squad might even be a little bit more difficult with the amount of talent around the league that might be available on the waiver wire that the Seahawks can add a chance to bounce back in the second preseason game. But no question that you could see that distance there between the vets atop the depth chart, even a guy like Nehemiah Pritchette in year 2, and what the Seahawks had playing in the third and fourth quarters of this game, where the Raiders were really able to take advantage and start getting things going with their passing game and generate a couple of scoring drives to position themselves to win this game, if not for that special teams blocked kick by Jaylen Gaines at the very end. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We will have our Friday show coming tomorrow. Kind of going to be summing up the way that this game went for the Seahawks, a little bit more in-depth discussion about what we learned about the 2025 Seahawks. That'll be coming your way tomorrow, our Blue Friday episode. Make sure that you listen in and enjoy your Friday morning. Go Hawks.